Okay. We can go ahead and get started. As people join, I will let them in. And this meeting is being recorded. So after this meeting, or sorry, excuse me, after this webinar, I will send a link to everybody so they can view it and share with their team. Thank you again, everybody, for being on this webinar. I'm Jonathan Lee. I'm the Sales and Marketing Manager with Engine. We have a special guest from our partner, cybersecurity solution provider Duo. Our guest speaker, his name is Kyle Brenza. He's been with Duo for almost 6 years now. He's the Duo partner manager, and he's a retired NFL player turned cybersecurity expert. So thank you, Kyle, for being here. For those that who do not know, Duo is a leading cybersecurity solution that helps organizations boost security by verifying user identity, establishing device trust, and providing a secure connection to company networks and applications. Engine is an authorized reseller for Duo. And then we do implement Duo for the sake of multi-factor authentication, single sign-on to boost security for our customers. So with that being said, thank you again, Kyle, for being here, and I'm going to hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jonathan, for the introduction. Welcome, everyone. As Jonathan was mentioning, I'm coming up here on 6 years here at Duo Security. I've been actually both on the managed service provider side of the house, but also the commercial direct to customers. So I kind of know both fields that Duos play in. And I've been with the MSP side as a partner manager for just a little over 4 or 5 months now. And I work with folks like Jonathan and Engine team. So I really appreciate them putting together kind of like what Jonathan was talking about, and you can see on the presentation today, we're really going to focus on the current state of MFA and really what we are starting to see across cybersecurity landscape as a whole. Especially nowadays, things have completely shifted the way we work, where we work, and how we're accessing things. To give you a little bit of background, as Jonathan was mentioning, Duo, we started off in 2009 simply as an MFA vendor. Our main focus was just on MFA for all applications, whether those are cloud, Radius, LDAP, logging into machines. We solely focused on just MFA. From there, over the years, we grew out of that bucket of just being an MFA provider and started dabbling a little bit more into the device security to the extent of being able to act as almost an MDM without the ability to wipe a device. So we're not as intrusive as some MDMs are being able to go into it. And then from there, we actually were acquired back in the fall of 2018, I believe it was, October 1st or 2nd, for 2.35 billion to help extend the cybersecurity arm of the Cisco organization. So if there's anything that you guys utilize today, Cisco speaking, more than likely Duo has that ability to integrate there. But kind of going back to why are we on this call? Really, I want to start discussing and start off with the bare bone basics of MFA. But as I mentioned, we want to start to dive into the change wise. What are we starting to see over the recent years? How is it impacting not only the need for MFA, but also how attackers are utilizing MFA now to their advantage and how you're able to prevent that moving forward. So with that being said, the basics of multi-factor authentication, it's pretty transparent and straightforward. It's something you know and something you own, right? So a password, username, your credentials, physical authentication devices. So whether that is cell phone, passcodes, callbacks, hard tokens, something that you're able to physically go in and utilize as an ability to truly authenticate. So verifying your identity at the login to 2FA with those type of instances is great, but that Duo and multi-factor in general is able to help reduce the risk of someone being able to gain access and control your accounts, even if the password is compromised. And so that's where MFA really comes into play. I'm sure all of us on the call can agree, Jonathan, you can probably agree that MFA has become a huge part of security standards, not only in work, but also personal lives. And even if we take it a couple of years back, ever since the pandemic, our workforces and our requirements around MFA and being able to meet certain standards continuously change and will continuously change as we continue to progress moving towards more of a cloud focus. So where are we at from a current state of the workforce? Where are we at in the current state of businesses? How are people acting and moving forward within this new realm of the world that we live in? And realistically, it all is in the cloud, right? But taking a step back there, as I was mentioning, the pandemic forced almost all businesses to go remote. And till this day, a lot are still remote. People are hiring for remote positions. Employees sometimes do not see the inside of an office space. For me, for example, even though before the pandemic I was with Duo and I'm only 20 miles away from our office, I only go in once or twice a week. And previously, before that, that was not the case. When we came into the pandemic situation, there was a lot more things that we moved to the cloud as opposed to on-prem type solutions. So there's a lot of changes that are starting to occur, and it's really going back to that 2019, 2020 timeframe where I believe it was the percentage was roughly about 16.5 of people worked remote. And now in 2022, 2023, I believe that number is up almost to 77, 78%. So that's about a 60% jump in employees working remote since 2019. And that is a huge leap. But with that, it also changes the way we are using our products. So that has opened up a can of worms that no one expected. That's moving cloud applications to the or moving applications to the cloud before folks were ready. That's allowing personal devices to have access to all their instances or environment even before they really wanted to. This is really allowing folks to gain these sensitive information through these applications all over the world through a geolocation type instance. And at the end of it all, insurance requirements continuously increase and are being mandated and has stepped in and forcing the hand of businesses to develop security plans, even if they're not at that point to do so. So I'll address a little bit more in terms of the insurance related stuff and what we're seeing. But a lot of this workforce that's being forced to be remote has also caused a lot of headaches and realistically at the end of the day, a lot of money to be dabbled into this. So with all this change of the way the business and the work is conducted, threats are continuously coming on the rise as well. As hackers have also changed their methods, businesses have adapted, but also so have the hackers. And the next step there is how are we going to be able to stop that? What are some of those threats? So as you might have noticed in the news in the past 12 to 18 months or so, there have been an unprecedented wave of cybersecurity attacks with devastating consequences for big names in the industry. Just a few: Microsoft, Twilio, Uber, WhatsApp, handful more that have been at the hand of the new cybersecurity wave of the way hackers are getting in to environments. And it's cost them a lot of money. It's cost them also a lot of their brand image and their likeness to folks. So from the likes of push bombing, push spraying, MFA fatigue, social engineering passwords, usernames, OTPs, attacks. I can go. The list continues to grow in so many different ways, and these attackers are finding new ways to gain access as standards continue to change. The way people are utilizing devices and logging into instances are changing as well. So multiple challenges are converging to make these attacks on organizations very vulnerable. For one, identity, right? AKA the user or the new perimeter. As we move to a more cloud state and a hybrid work environment, without some of the security parameters, the user is both not only the first, but it's also the only line of defense through their credentials for a hacker to be able to get into. This is putting a more of a focus and a need to protecting the users with protecting the likes of multi-factor or policy stacks that are sitting behind just basic MFA to really make sure we can prevent these types of hacks that are occurring and what we're seeing across the news. And to be honest, we don't expect these to stop, right? Per Cisco's 2023 cybersecurity readiness, I believe the findings were roughly about 78, 80% of companies were not ready to protect themselves against these types of threats until cyber liability, FTC safeguards, and those types of insurances came into play and has now began to force their hand to start thinking that way. And this is why those insurance agencies and compliance standards are going to continue to grow. It's from the likes of things like this where hackers are able to start changing the way they do things, right? So I'm sure a lot of you are already aware of these logos, compliance standards, but as you see here, it's no longer about just the basic PCIs, GDPRs, NISTs, HIPAA. They're newcomers in this world that we're forcing the hand for the folks like you to be able to meet the standards. And one of those standards is simply MFA, not just across the organization, but also at the front end of where they're logging into workstations, for example, whether that's Windows or Mac logins, so on and so forth. On top of these requirements, at the end of the day, they're incentivizing organizations to form to these standards, uh, truly in efforts to be giving them discount breaks. I'm not sure if everyone on this call has already gone through cyber liability insurance, but ultimately what it's going to do is it's going to provide a plethora amount of savings from a money stature. One of it's making sure that your data is safe. It's securing behind MFA, not only just through MFA but also policies, both at the, as I mentioned, the desktop level and the remote level, wherever they're logging in from. As I was referring to the discounts, most discounts I have seen truly not only just pays for the product themselves, but it leaves them room to spare for a true savings perspective if there's other products that folks have to go out and do. From what I've seen internally with our clients, um, when they do pass cyber liability insurance, the discount that they're offered is just outrageous, right? It just makes sense to continue to not only just put a band-aid over something, but go beyond just checking the box and truly meet those requirements. And lastly, it's ultimately it's going to provide a sense of security, right? For the fact that if something ever were to happen, you will be covered by these insurance agencies, and you're not putting your company fully into a financial risk, right? Uh, but at the end of the day, I'm not here to scare anyone by any means. As well as we're all in this world together from both a business and personal perspective. We know the risks that are associated day in and day out as our technology continues to change and continues to develop in very remote access ways. But that also means our ability to think and take a bigger picture approach and start diving deeper into the needs um, well before, as opposed to it's too late, right? And that for us is kind of one of the biggest areas I wanted to focus on is how do we start thinking of MFA a little bit differently? How do we start thinking of it more as of just placing a passcode, just placing clicking on a button that's green to say I approve this login? What new is going to be coming out there that we should start focusing on as this wave of cybersecurity hackers, but also the growth to the cloud and SAML-based applications continues to occur, right? So I'll talk through a little bit of the MFA traditional tools and what's going to be changed and what we're starting to see change-wise. And not only we're doing in our product at Duo, but the likes of Microsoft, Okta, so on and so forth are also doing. The second one is we're going to be able to kind of walk through a little bit more of outside MFA. Don't think of it as just that bucket, but also start ensuring the device and location security. And then lastly, what it means to start adopting more of a zero trust security model or even passwordless state. So from changing of MFA solution tools, traditionally MFA has been through just the form of, as I mentioned, push notification, a red or green button, SMS text messages, being able to take that passcode and then put it somewhere, or the likes of hard tokens, right? I think a lot of us can kind of date back and think of the RSA tokens or hard tokens even through Duo. I know there's a lot more new ones out there. We have a partnership with Yubico where they have ones that you can kind of just touch on the side, U2F tokens, FIDO tokens, so on and so forth. That has been the traditional way of thinking multi-factor is going to be able to be utilized. It's just that something else that you own to verify you're the ones putting these credentials. But we should really looking forward and further than just MFA um, is we need to start thinking about these larger entities that are compromised. The proper MFA integration or type of auth form for those MFA hackers that were able to be compromised could have been stopped simply put if it was done appropriately from a remote access or cloud-based integration. Um, and for us, that's one of the biggest things that we're starting to move to is this new authentication mode of risk-based authentication, or as we call it, RBA. Microsoft has this. I'm not sure if Okta or others do, but it's starting to become more prevalent, just like passwordless is. So on our end, what is RBA? Now, Duo as I mentioned, isn't the only vendor. But what it's able to do is it's able to determine the risk level in real time at login by evaluating the context around the user, device, location, around traditionally the normalized standards. So if Jonathan logs into this application at this time of day on this machine from this Wi-Fi, this IP address, Duo and these products through multi-factor are able to start picking up on this from this authentication. We're start to determine what Jonathan's normalization is. Now it's a matter of what happens with anomaly text, right? What's going to happen when it's picking up on things where it's traditionally not a standard. So as RBA is detecting all these anomalies, what it'll do is it'll automatically enforce a different type of authentication. So not your phone call, not your text message, not your green push button that you can automatically get MFA fatigued, which we're seeing a lot of these hackers starting to do, where they're push bombing and push spraying to see if someone will just click a green button because they have your credential. In this instance, it simply does not give you any of those abilities to allow the hacker, or quite frankly, if it's not a hacker, if it's you, you're just logging in from vacation or somewhere else that it's picking up on these different anomalies, it's going to force you to do something more. It's going to force you to start thinking, if this is this truly me that's going to be able to log in here? So what it's going to do is it's going to push this passcode onto the machine that's logging into, that you then have to put onto your actual device. It used to be vice versa, which these hackers have figured out different ways that if you're actually pushing the code to the phone, they can find ways to intercept that. In this instance, there isn't really a way for these folks to intercept this. Now, don't get me wrong, as I mentioned, things are changing. Maybe down the road they somehow figure this way out, right? But ultimately, hopefully, we get to that point where we also figure something else out that we can move on to the next step and then the next step, so we can always continue to stay on top of these. But in this instance, this is going to provide, as I mentioned, the passcode on the screen, the machine, which is going to force you to start thinking. But if it is a hacker that they socially engineered your credentials to log in, they simply won't have the ability to complete this request because they do not have that device where that code needs to be placed on. That code is not going to be sent to any other device except for your specific one that is set up for you as an end user. You also do not have the ability as the end user to complete it, right? You don't have that station that is placing these credentials where you actually have to read off of and put them into your phone. As I mentioned, you don't have that green button you can just easily push anymore. It's this code. It takes the next step. We're going to have to start thinking a little bit more, but also realistically, it cuts that tie of you even be able to do anything else. Um, I could go on and on about our RBA and how it's going to be able to detect these threats and enforce, and really how it's going to come to market for a lot of organizations, not just for Duo, but we are truly already starting to see internally here. It's taking off with a lot of our clients. So if you already a Duo customer, I will say feel free to reach out to myself or Jonathan. We're more than happy to assist in setting it up for you. Um, we can work with Jonathan's team. We'll work with my technical engineer team as well, get you some proper information. But if this is your first time ever hearing about Duo, or not even utilizing Duo before, and you have more questions around this, not even from just a Duo solution and how we utilize RBA, or you just want to understand a little bit more, please do not hesitate to reach out. We always want to make sure we're staying up as the thought leaders and so on and so forth. Um, in terms of the second change, where folks are starting to see is, kind of like the same reason around RBA, the risk-based authentication, and why it's even come to fruition is the device folks are using and what the locations are coming from. Now, with cloud apps being very much more prevalent today, and folks working realistically all over the world, right? I had a buddy who, when the pandemic hit, he started city hopping. He hopped in his truck and put on a camper, and he was able to go everywhere, and he was able to work from all those different locations. So for him, his workstation was truly on the road remote. We don't see, maybe we do still see that as much, but we also are seeing more people working truly from home. They're not on that IP address anymore that could be whitelisted. They're not on that Wi-Fi that could also be whitelisted. They are specifically somewhere else. And policies outside of just MFA are becoming much more prevalent and very huge these times. So you might already have some of these types of policies, whether it's MDMs, I know Microsoft's Intune, AirWatch, so on and so forth. But if you don't, take a look into your MFA provider already today. See if they have any stacks within the products to detect, the risk of personal devices or their ability to authenticate and be able to limit where these devices are logging in from a location level. Just because in terms of where we're at in the world, I can't harp on it enough. It's changed quite a bit. The last change we're really focused on, or we're really trying to start to see with our customers, and even outside of Duo, we're seeing Gartner speak about a lot more. Even at the RSA conference, I believe it's this week. It's going to be very one of the more prevalent things is people moving to more passwordless or zero trust environment state. Now, some of you might be thinking it's a very much a buzzword, which I'll be honest, it very much is. Just because zero trust and passwordless can mean different things for different types of people, just because our environments are not always the same. So, from a passwordless state, as you can see here, Gartner says by 2025, passwordless truly not is only going to be the most secure, but it's also going to be the most common auth in a couple of years. So with the likes of multi-factor, before passwordless authentication is a way to verify people are who they say they are. And what makes passwordless different from basic MFA is how that verification is happening. So traditional MFA, taking a step back here, solely is relying on something you have, that mobile phone, that iWatch to be able to authenticate from, uh, and something like your credentials, right? Passwordless login, what makes it different is it's still going to use something that you have and something or sorry, it still includes something you have, but it replaces the password with something that you are. So the biometrics. I myself have a MacBook where I have the ability to do a fingerprint. So that is something that's of a biometric that is specifically unique to myself that another machine might not be able to pick up on. So just like MFA, passwordless is going to use these two factors to verify identity. But ultimately, the beauty of passwordless is it's both factors can happen in a single gesture. For example, you pick up your device and you perform a biometric. It's just going to be as simple as that. Ultimately, too, by going passwordless, organizations can address the two major problems that we're really seeing with passwords, and that's a security gap and that's usability issues. So, from a passwordless authentication, one thing that we're promising to our customers is one, it's going to improve your user experience. Users are going to get seamless access without having to use special characters or simply put, always having to change them because it's going to also help be able to reduce that IT overhead or help that support, hopefully, because fewer passwords are going to mean fewer password resets. Um, and then lastly, from a three-step approach here with passwordless, it's going to hopefully then strengthen security faster. Attackers can't steal a password if there realistically is no password to steal. Now, as for zero trust security models, or some people on here might know this as more of a trusted endpoint, as that's what we call it here at the Duo on our Duo solution. It's a form of giving an organization control over the devices that can access your environment. So this can happen one or two forms. One, you can allow your corporate issued devices only to gain access. Or two, you can allow a more BYOD state of mind, but you can deem which personal devices are allowed to log in. Now, that is one of the biggest things with trusted endpoints and zero trust security model is you are starting to deem which devices have access. Now, what makes that different from, geolocation, things like that, when you are not having a policy stack where you cannot deem which devices are able to log into, any device has the ability. Now, some people might not be there at that state of being able to, fully trust every single machine out there or having a way to get it out there. There's several different loopholes to be able to deem which ones are trusted. So, if you are interested in Duo solution and wanting to know more about that, more than happy to dive into that. But I'm trying to keep it high level for you all. And realistically, this can also be done through an MDM or other products of the likes. Here at Duo, as I mentioned, we have a feature that we use and we call it our device health application or DHA. And it's just an installer rather than an agent that sits on that device, whether it's personal, corporate issued that you've pushed out as an admin. And it's able to read every time you log into a cloud based application or some sorts of like the application. It's going to simply pull a drop down menu and be able to read off of, are you up to date? Do you have a passcode enabled at the machine level? Are you running antiviruses, so on and so forth, to be able to make sure that we're deeming this device not only as trusted, but also it's not going to put your environment at risk. Now, um, I know I've been sharing a lot with you all. Hopefully, I'm gonna say hopefully I haven't put any of you guys to sleep, but I'll wrap it up here a little bit and kind of address and highlight a few things that we chatted about, in addition to what we should expect in the coming years. Um, in the near term, really what we're starting to expect and hopefully continue to move forward. It's one of our focuses here at Duo. Is we ask our folks to be more, they're going to be more forced, right? They're moving to the cloud. It's a forceful way at the moment, just with these insurance policies and the way people are utilizing their workforces in applications. But realistically, that's the world we live in. And we truly expect single sign on or SSO to be highly adopted. And this can, cause some security risks, which highlights the need for folks that we have to be more secure, not only just at the perimeter, but also from an all a device level, location level, and all the users within from an identity perspective. Passwordless. It is and will become the strongest form of authentication very, very quickly. Again, as I mentioned, it provides more ways of authenticating who you really are, as opposed to just a credential and a push notification to hit approve. It will also ultimately help reduce IT headaches. Hopefully, for the folks on here that are admins or maybe do some stuff from an IT help desk, hopefully it will be able to start dwindling all the password resets we all have to go through, and not have to deal with folks who simply put might forget that next password that you help reset them for. And then lastly, as highlighted early on, uh, I strongly and we at Duo do not believe insurance requirements will go away. Jonathan, I'm sure your team can attest to it too. It's something that everyone is coming to us, coming to NGen and the likes like that, to continue to meet. As I mentioned, it's no longer the GDPR and NIST folks that you have to stay on top of. It's going to be the cyber liabilities, the FTC safeguards, which is coming up, I believe, June 1st. If you're any sort of financial institution, which can be classified as several different ways, and I believe it also pulls in some GDPR and PCI, where if you're housing some credit card information, things like that, you have to have multi-factor enabled. So, at the end of the day, they might scare you, but also they're trying to enforce good security habits, as they're also putting their eggs in your basket. So if something were to ever happen, you'll be fully covered. So I know we got some time up here, but that's my time. We will open it up for any Q&A. But if you want to have more in-depth one-on-one conversation as opposed to asking the questions here, please do not hesitate to reach out to myself or Jonathan. I'm more than happy to facilitate conversations, even if it's not just around Duo, but it's more of the thought leadership and thinking around where MFA and security is going to be going. So.
Thank you so much, Kyle. Uh, Very, very good information in there. I appreciate it. And I'm sure everybody else on this call appreciates it. I'll start with the first question, because I know this is a question that's often brought up when we're implementing multi-factor authentication for different customer environments. There's a lot of concern about um, uh, user acceptance of the new way of life as it relates to how you log in to your email or how you log into your workstation. People having to put an application on their phones and things like that. How do you see, from your perspective, ways to navigate those conversations with your employees and your staff as it relates to, them getting that on their cell phones and things like that?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And I'll be honest, that's the first question that a lot of people come to mind with, because ultimately, if you're in the IT world and you're thinking MFA and you're having a conversation with NGen or myself over at Duo or Microsoft, Okta, so on and so forth, you are the forward thinkers. Janet in finance or elsewhere, they're not knowing that you're having these conversations. So one of the biggest things we do at Duo, kind of taking a step approach here, running proof of concept is very big when it comes to MFA. Obviously, you want to make sure that that product works appropriately, not only just with your integrations, but also for specific users. Here at Duo, we have policies that we can set up that can either force requirement of enrollment of Duo. It can also be able to simply, if you're not enrolled, we simply skip you and you have to reach out to your admin. But our POC of running that proof of concept, we have a policy that states um, being able to skip 2FA for anyone that is not enrolled in Duo. So if all of us on the call today are the ones that are truly doing a trial of Duo security and we're enrolled, we will be required with MFA. Everyone else throughout the organization will not see Duo at all. They might see a little bit of a change in the back end of like it's just like spinning up and then they automatically log in. Duo's MFA will not come into play at all. So you can fully test it. From there, to part of your question was being able to enroll those users and how to be able to properly position the product to your employees. One of the biggest things from a Duo perspective, and a lot of authenticators out there as well, is even though you're putting an authenticator on the cell phone of a personal device, it's not an MDM. From a Duo perspective, what we're able to do with that authenticator on your device is read, is there a passcode enabled? Is it out of date? Is it tampered with? Is it jailbroken? Now, we give you that reporting, but it's for you as an admin to determine which way you're going to utilize that. So you can deem if you're using a device that is not have a passcode enabled or it's not up to date and it's going to put your environment at risk, you can deem that as when they try to authenticate, it says, hey, you're not allowed to log in at this moment. You need to do these updates. But also, too, you don't have to do that. So if you have folks who simply are against wanting to put something on their device, you can put them into a group policy that says these folks don't want to do this, so I'm going to bypass these types of features. But if you're really strict, which we highly suggest, because I mean, we're in 2023. If no one has a passcode on their phone, they're not keeping up to date. What are we doing? Type deal. Obviously, we know all the risks out there, but also too the enhancements that comes with those devices when you're keeping up to date are so much more. But if you do come across folks who don't want to utilize a cell phone or anything of a personal matter, you do have the ability to do hard tokens. So as I mentioned, I'll actually even go back here um, in my deck. You can see from a Duo's perspective, you have the ability to also use hard tokens, YubiKey as well, so on and so forth. So there's other options of authentications for those types of users. Now, as I mentioned, we're on the MSP side now. I work with the likes of NGen, but previously I worked directly with your folks, yourselves like clients. I covered the Canadian space, which, in my opinion, they can be 5 to 8 years behind in terms of some security and cybersecurity stuff, just because all the insurances and liabilities are not there at the moment. But I also worked with a lot of manufacturing organizations, and a lot of those folks, I wouldn't say a lot, there was a handful of folks that still had flip phones. So the only way for them to be able to utilize Duo on a phone was simply a callback, an SMS text message. Well, they didn't want that, so they were able to use hard tokens. Even from the essence of folks that are utilizing out-of-date cell phones, as I mentioned, they can also use that. Now, the biggest question, Jonathan, you kind of brought up was how do you help make these folks aware? Ourselves, I know Microsoft and Okta does this as well. There is a lot of good information that we can provide to you from a guide perspective. Email blasts out, hey, Duo's coming, XYZ, MFA is coming down the line. Here's the steps you need to do. Get yourself set up that way. From Duo perspective, we actually came about in 2009. We obviously understood we were going to work with clients, right? But we also made our product to be self-service. And that was one of the biggest things that we took on was we want to be self-service through our proper documentation. And that also came with the enrollment of end users. So we made our enrollment for end users try to be as easy as possible. Obviously, there's some hiccups. Technical knowledge across people can be very different. But also, too, we have different policies in the back end that even though you're enabling Duo, you don't have to enable at that exact moment. You can give them a 7, 14, 21 day window, 2-month window to get this set up, but you give them that due date of you need to be set up by this time or else you're going to be locked out and you're going to have to then automatically be forced to enroll in MFA. So hopefully I touched on that. I know I kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but realistically from a getting people to understand and comprehend that an MFA is going to be utilized, It's a little bit easier nowadays, but obviously you're going to have some of those folks that say, "Hey, I don't want to put this on a personal device." There's definitely a lot of other authenticators out there that you can utilize for those specific products to allow them to use for MFA.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you brought up tokens too, because I know that we have customers who also work in the federal government, and they may have special security clearances where
Yep.
they're not allowed to bring their cell phone into certain areas. And
Yeah.
so they have to rely on tokens or YubiKeys or what have you.
And I would even say too, with FTC safeguards, the focus for financial institutions, um, for us, we've seen a lot of credit unions. They've been kind of one of the last stragglers from a financial banking institution where they're getting MFA set up. But I've come across a lot where uh, they don't allow cell phones at their desk. They don't allow them for the bankers and so on and so forth. So what we've been able to do is you can either give each of them a hard token, or you can have that hard token sit at that desk for that machine to then be able to log into. That's not the most secure way, but it also is an ability. If there's a landline prevalent and there's a specific number to reach that landline, you can also utilize that way as well. So I know that's come a long way because a while ago, landlines weren't the most impactful unless it was an actual house landline. If there's a proper triage to desk phones, then we are also able to provide that as multi-factor.
Thank you. Um, I wanted to open up to any questions that anybody in the audience may have. I believe you should just be able to type your question into the chat box. If you have any, just give it a minute.
And like I was telling Jonathan before this, if you guys don't have any questions at the moment, follow up with us. We're more than happy to jump on any calls and facilitate conversations that way.
Okay, I think we're good on questions. Um, Thank you so much, Kyle. I really appreciate your time. Everyone out there, again, Engine is a Duo partner. We believe them to be the best solution for authentication. So if there's anything that you're thinking about in terms of securing your environment as it relates to remote access or in-office access, anything relating to protecting your email, protecting your account when you log into your workstation, we can definitely help you get that going. Again, this meeting was recorded, so I will send out a link to everybody with a copy of the recording. It looks like somebody's typing a question, so but yes, I will send a recording out later today. And if anybody has any follow-up questions or anything, you can feel free to reach out. Annette is asking the question, we have Duo, does that mean we have to update?
And what do you mean by update?
I'm thinking, here, I'll let her finish asking her question. So Kyle, do you want to run through the different features of Duo?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me go back here. And I will actually I'll share a different um, edition package. And then that I can also follow up with you directly and speak with you in terms of your specific account. But from a Duo edition comparison, let me share my screen. Here we go. Jonathan, let me know if you can see this.
Yes. And I believe that her organization is in the MFA tier. That
Yep.
first tier.
So So from an MFA tier, actually, and to kind of provide you some insight as well, this is the last time I will actually be showing this edition comparison. Duo is uh, three editions, one product, just like normal subscription bases are there out there. If you use like Hulu, YouTube Live, whatever it is, there's obviously different packages and whatnot. For us, we just provide more policies and more granularity across different reports. The reason why I say this is going to be the last time I show this, actually at RSA, we are announcing that our zero trust kind of security model of the trusted endpoints is no longer just going to be in the Beyond edition. It's going to be allowed in the Access as well as the MFA edition. That'll start kicking into, I believe, next month or the 1st of June. So if you guys are utilizing multi-factor today and you want to be able to have the ability to use those trusted endpoints, be able to dictate what machines and what devices can have access to your environment, you will have access to that. Now, from a geolocation policy stack or the ability to utilize the risk-based authentication, so that anomaly ability to detect those risky logins through your pattern learning of normality of users and the way they utilize Duo and the way they utilize their applications and logins, that is a part of our middle tier. So if you're wanting the RBA instance of being able to have that anomaly detection and enforcing a different type of multi-factor as opposed to the possibility of allowing push spraying or push bombing, you will have to upgrade from MFA to Access. If you are wanting to have the ability to have those trusted endpoint sessions, you can stick where you're at. So you're hearing this first. You might have not got the comms out to your team yet, but if you're already on MFA edition, you will have those trusted endpoints here very soon as well.
Um, and I believe the difference between MFA and Access is just a couple dollars, right, per user?
Correct. Yep. So if you were to go on our website, you'll see MFA basic tier is $3 a user per month. Access is $6 a user per month. Um, hopefully the way Engine's providing it to you guys, you'll either see the same or maybe a little bit cheaper pricing than that. But there are a heck of a lot of features and upgrades that occur from the MFA to Access Edition, and the biggest ones are, like I said, those actionable insights into those desktops and mobile devices, the ability to enforce updates to them, the geolocation policy stack, the risk-based authentication. That's the big piece of Access. One thing I meant to note as well for you in that if you're referring to also passwordless, you have the ability for passwordless state with Duo in the MFA edition. You do. So you'll be able to see passwordless as well as the ability for trusted endpoints here very soon on just the basic MFA edition.
And I just want to clarify one thing. So you said fingerprint is a example of passwordless. What are other passwordless options other than fingerprint?
Yeah, so currently right now we're actually starting to work with Windows Hello, being able to use the biometric of the facial ID recognition. Obviously, when you're talking about the phone, there's several different ways over there to authenticate. I've also seen the ability where if you don't have the actual machine and you have a fingerprint scanner next to it, you can utilize that. There's going to be a heck of a lot more. The one thing that we're working already right now on the machine for Apple is also going to be the facial recognition. So there's a lot more out there that is to come. And I will say it's a very buzzword, right? Passwordless, zero trust security model. They're very much buzzwords. It's also because we're very, very at the start of it. But by 2025, as I mentioned, Gardner said, and we even agree too, it's going to become one of the most secure authentication ways. And I'm pretty sure as we start to change things, machines will start to update to allow more biometrics that we'll be able to utilize that way as well.
Okay, thank you. Um, just another final call for any other questions anyone might have. All right. Okay, Kyle, once again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to speak with everybody. You've given us some great information today, and thank you for making yourself available for any follow-up questions that anyone may have after this webinar. Again, everybody, this is being recorded, so I'll send out a link, and thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah. Thank you, Jonathan. Have a good day, everyone.
All right, bye bye.